A simple recon mission, 7 elite soldiers, 1 alien, and enough firepower to overthrow a small country. Predator had it all: assault rifles, machine guns, miniguns, bows, mines, grenades, grenade launchers, high-tech non-existent grenade launchers, and guns. Lots and lots of guns. One of the most iconic action movies of all time lined up some of the biggest movie stars of its era and depicted what will forever be etched into movie history as one of the most absurdly unrealistic but nonetheless fun action films ever made. Predator received its fair share of criticism from military experts and gun enthusiasts over the years for its lack of realism. And in this video, we'll be taking a look at it to see how bad it really is, and to answer the most important question: does it matter? Let's get started. When a chopper carrying a cabinet member and his aide is shot down, the US government calls upon the Terminator and Apollo Creed to lead a search and rescue mission deep in the rainforests of Central America. As far as the on-site commander, General Phillips, knows, the minister and his aide were taken by local guerrillas who are mostly armed with small-caliber firearms. And the plan is for the team to pick up their trail at the crash site, grab the hostages, and return them home. The 7-member team running the op consists of Major Dutch, widely regarded as the best search and rescue operative in the country, Dylan, a former elite operative now working for the CIA, and 5 other members. Dutch decided to go with an M16A1 fitted with an M203 grenade launcher. And just to further showcase his love of grenades, he's packing a pair of M67 hand grenades on his vest. This isn't that unrealistic of a loadout for a one-day mission in the rainforest, but it's only going to get more ridiculous from here. Billy also went with an M16, but his assault rifle is fitted with a Mossberg 500 shotgun and Lone Star Ordnance round handguards. However, unlike Dutch's run-of-the-mill grenade launcher, Billy's shotgun is magical as it seemingly appears and disappears at will. On top of the mystical Mossberg, Billy is also inseparable from the earliest variation of the Desert Eagle, the Mark I 357 Magnum. And when I say inseparable, I mean that literally. They sleep together. Dutch, Mac, Poncho, and Hawkins all carry Desert Eagles as their sidearms, while Dylan packs arguably the most popular handgun of all time, the Colt M19 11A1. Dylan, Blaine, Poncho, and Hawkins all carry Heckler & Koch HK94A3s with shortened barrels, which are supposed to represent MP5A3s. Heckler & Koch HK94 parts are also used in combination with an ANM5 pyrotechnic discharger to build an incredible but non-existent grenade launcher carried by Poncho. As for machine guns, Mac carries an M60E3 with a shortened barrel, which is understandable as the team needs at least one heavy weapon to put pressure on enemy troops. But what really takes the cake as possibly the most excessive weapon in action movie history is the M134 minigun, carried by Blaine. Nicknamed the Old Painless by the team, this 6-barrel monstrosity weighs an astonishing 85 pounds, firing at a fantastic rate of up to 6,000 NATO standard 7.62 51mm rounds per minute. It utilizes battery power to rotate the barrels, and the battery has to weigh at least another 30 pounds, while the 550 rounds Blaine carries weigh another 31 pounds. Oh, and don't forget that the ammo has to be neatly packed in an ammo box, which is standardized and weighs approximately 24 pounds. When you draw the line, the entire weapon system weighs about 140 pounds, which means that Blaine was effectively carrying another person until his untimely demise at the hands of the Predator. This weapon, developed by General Electric, entered service in 1962 as a tripod-mounted weapon for infantry and as helicopter and aircraft armament during the Vietnam War. It's widely beloved for its rate of fire and the ability to engage targets at a range of well over 1 kilometer. Now, for all those wondering, no, you absolutely cannot use the M134 as a handheld weapon in real life. It was specifically designed for tripod and vehicular use. In order to make it handheld, movie armorers modified this minigun with an M60 handguard and a rear pistol grip. In fact, just in order to film the fight scenes, the on-set armorers had to decrease the rate of fire to 1,250 rounds per minute, as that was the simplest way of easing recoil, saving on ammunition, and avoiding complete chaos during fight scenes. A rate of fire of 1,250 RPM is very low for an M134, but it's still incredibly powerful, as the actor Jesse Ventura, who played Blaine, commented that it was like firing a chainsaw, and you simply had to grit your teeth and hold on. In real life, the recoil of firing a handheld M134 would pretty much blow your back out, and you'd find yourself on the ground, disoriented, and in shock, feeling like a piece of beef after a round with Rocky in the freezer. In short, it would render both you and the weapon ineffective in combat. Given that Blaine only packed about 550 rounds, the minigun only had about 25 seconds worth of firepower. And combining that with its size, weight, and how much it'd slow the entire team down as they forced their way through the dense rainforest, no team in the world would willingly carry this into combat. Despite it being ridiculously unrealistic, it's one of the most iconic weapons in movie history, and its application, no matter how disconnected it is from reality, is one of the reasons we love this movie. Billy and Dutch both carry an M16A1 into combat. But get this, neither of the two rifles are actually M16A1s. They're actually AR-15 slab-side rifles fitted with flash hiders from an M16A1 to make them look more realistic, while Billy's AR also has handguards from an M16A2. All in all, they're Frankenstein weapons, made to look like M16s. And in this shot, you can actually see the blank fire adapter in the muzzle brake of Billy's rifle. A blank fire adapter is a tiny attachment used to cycle ammo when firing blanks. Actors in action movies obviously aren't using live rounds, and with gas-operated rifles such as the AR-15 used in this movie, the adapter is needed to push the combustion gases backward into the weapon and rechamber the next round. Here's a fun fact. Even though blanks can't kill you, the paper or plastic plug in a blank round can still penetrate flesh if you stand in front of it when fired, and the exploding gas can inflict serious wounds. So, if you ever find yourself near someone firing blanks, do not stand in front of the barrel. Returning to the topic at hand. There are some comments online accusing the movie of inconsistency, saying that Billy and Dutch are carrying Colt Commando XM177 rifles, which would be highly unlikely because the XM177 rifles, including the improved E1 and E2 systems, were well known for their issues, such as small magazines, accuracy, and barrel fouling. This is untrue. Billy and Dutch are definitely carrying M16s. The M16s are similar to the XM177, as the latter is essentially a smaller version of the former, designed for special operations, and it's easy to mistake one for another. The easiest way to tell the difference is to look at the stock. All variations of the XM177 have collapsible stocks, while the M16 has a fixed stock, and you can easily tell the difference from this photo. Also, note how larger the M16A1 is. Now, returning once again to Billy's shotgun. It's a run-of-the-mill Mossberg 500. Aside from being operated as a standalone shotgun, it could also be attached to the M16 as an underbarrel weapon, turning the weapon system into a two-weapon system and allowing the user to quickly switch between weapons. Shotguns are useful in close combat and for busting doors down, but an underbarrel Mossberg 500 could actually damage the main M16 platform. As you can see in this still from the movie, the butt of the shotgun is pressed against the magazine of the M16, and given the mad recoil on that thing, it could, at some point, crack the receiver of the M16, rendering the gun completely useless. That's why the original intention of this design was only to use the shotgun to destroy door hinges when breaching houses. To address this issue, the United States military actually requested a development of a modular accessory shotgun system known as the M26 MASS, which entered service in 2003. And you know what? We only see Billy fire the gun once in the movie, and he only does it when he runs out of ammo for his M16, implying that he's doing it as a last resort. In short, Billy knows what he's doing, and the Mossberg is useful, but the operator should limit its usage and only pull it out when necessary. Here's another bit of trivia for you. Billy was never supposed to carry a Mossberg 500, but Dutch's M203 launcher as his M16 attachment instead. This was changed during movie production. Finally, Billy carries a machete as a tool for breaking through the thick jungle brush. This is completely valid as he's the team's designated scout, and he's usually a few dozen feet in front of everyone else, clearing the path and looking for the hostages. As I clarified before, Dutch is packing an M203 grenade launcher with a 39mm bore diameter as his underbarrel attachment. Now, before we go on, I have to say this. There is no such thing as a 39mm M203. The M203 is a 40mm grenade launcher, not 39, but the launcher in the movie was designed specifically for firing a pyrotechnic charge used by special effects teams in the 70s and 80s. For this reason, you can also see the same launcher in Scarface and Heartbreak Ridge. Another funny thing is the fact that we can see Dutch putting 40mm rounds in his M203, which literally wouldn't fit down the barrel in real life. However, let's suspend our expectations of reality for a moment and pretend that it's a real M203. The most unrealistic moment the M203 sees in the movie is Dutch firing it at a very close range and the round exploding. This would not happen in real life, as actual M203 rounds are armed with a failsafe system, and they have to spin a certain number of times and cross a certain distance before arming. This design was intentionally placed to prevent the operator from accidentally firing too close to themselves and blowing their legs off. In short, the rounds have a minimum range, as is the case with most explosive rounds, meaning that they would not explode in this scene. However, if you thought that Arnold's grenade launcher was unrealistic, wait until you take a look at Poncho's. His grenade launcher is truly one of a kind. It was built for this movie by the armorers, and it doesn't exist in real life. It's using the stock and grips of a Heckler & Koch HK94 and the AN M5 pyrotechnic discharger to create whatever that abomination is supposed to be. The stock confused the life out of me while watching this movie because when not in combat, Poncho is carrying the launcher in his back pouch, and it looks more like any HK firearm rather than a grenade launcher. The barrel is clearly 37mm in diameter, providing a bit less of a punch than Dutch's alleged 40mm launcher. Ironically, since Poncho's grenades are 37mm, they would fit into Dutch's 39mm launcher, unlike his actual 40mm grenades. Now, while we're on the topic of ammo, let's take a look at how much ammo they'd realistically have to carry. We already discussed Blaine's minigun and the 550 rounds he packed. Starting at the lower end of the list, everyone carrying a Desert Eagle would likely pack 2 magazines, each with a maximum capacity of 9 rounds, while Dylan, who packed a Colt M1911A1, likely had 2 7-round magazines. And before someone gets at me in the comments, I know 1911s today have an 8-round magazine. But back in the day, they were limited to 7 rounds. It's unclear whether Billy is supposed to carry an M16A1 or an A2. He definitely has A2 handguards, which weren't used with the A1, but Dutch is most certainly carrying an A1. This inconsistency may seem irrelevant, but it's actually important when it comes to ammo. See, the M16A2's magazine carried 30 rounds, while you could use both 20-round and 30-round magazines with the M16A1. It seems like the magazines both characters use are roughly the same size, so I'm going to assume Dutch is also using larger magazines for his gun. Funnily enough, Dutch is the most absurd character in the movie when it comes to ammo. First of all, the magazine pouches on his vest are empty from the beginning of the movie, implying that he either brought a single magazine on the mission, which is highly unlikely, or that he's carrying them in a spot I can't say out loud because I don't want to be banned by YouTube. For clarity, this is what 20-round magazines look like when pouched, and 30-round magazines are only bigger. Secondly, we never see him reload, and he fires well over 30 rounds in the movie, implying that he's either reloading off screen or that his gun is even more special than Billy's disappearing Mossberg. Thirdly, there's a point in the movie in which he pulls an explosive satchel out of seemingly nowhere. And you can see clearly in this still, just before the big firefight, the big man himself is headed into action with just his M16. And then in the next frame, he has an Arnold Ex Machina moment and wills an explosive satchel into existence. Dutch's backpack and empty pockets are seemingly a black hole with an entire universe of ammo and explosives he can pull into our plane of existence whenever he feels like it. Up next, Dylan, Blaine, Poncho, and Hawkins are all packing supposed MP5A3s, which are actually HK94A3s, modified to look like MP5s. Once again, at no point do we see anyone carrying ammo in their pouches. For reference, here's an image of what MP5 magazines look like on a vest. At no point do we see this in the movie. Moving on to Mac, who's carrying an M60E3, and he's alongside Blaine, the only squad member actually packing his ammo properly. This is a belt-fed weapon, meaning that there's a literal belt of 50 or 100 rounds neatly stacked into a case that is attached to the gun. You can see the ammo case on several occasions, and you can actually see the belt feeding into the gun. Ironically, aside from Mac, the only other person with a realistic ammo loadout is Blaine, the squad member with possibly the most unrealistic weapon choice in action movie history. Blaine is dutifully carrying his M134 ammo box, as you can see here. Now, we finally get to one of two combat scenes in the movie, in which, by all logic, the squad should be really low on ammo, but they dump enough lead into the jungle to mow down dozens of rows of enemies, while they actually hit nothing but trees and shrubbery. At this point in the movie, Blaine and Hawkins have fallen victim to the Predator, and Matt catches a glimpse of the infamous hunter, yells "Contact!" and opens fire in the general direction of the Predator. He quickly picks up Blaine's minigun, and the rest of the squad joins him, firing without actual contact for what seems like eternity. The only realistic thing about this scene is the fact that Mac informed everyone of contact and opened fire. Aside from that, everything else is a prime example of what we all thought Special Ops did as kids. But now that we've grown up, we know that it has nothing to do with reality. Now, one could argue that they're all scared out of their minds and that the squad lost control over their actions. But remember, we're talking about a highly specialized search and rescue team with years of experience under the belt, which is mentioned several times in the movie. During the shooting, every single squad member fires way more rounds than any of their weapons could possibly have. Another unrealistic thing is that Dutch doesn't order them to cease fire upon realizing that the target is long gone, and they only stop shooting once they're out of ammo. To top it all off, they all run dry on ammo at precisely the same time, which is insane since all squad members except for Mac should have 30-round magazines, and based on their fire rate, they'd all empty their magazines in a matter of seconds. Then, without establishing a perimeter, which would be the first thing you'd do if you were just ambushed by the enemy, Dutch sends Billy and Poncho to look for the Predator while he, Dylan, and Mac lower their guard and examine Blaine's body. After Billy and Poncho return from their search with nothing to show for it, only then does Dutch get the brilliant idea of establishing a defensive perimeter. This entire scene is complete chaos, and as you might assume, it's the exact opposite of real-life military tactics, especially not the tactics of highly trained special operators. In fact, one of the 4 golden rules of gun handling is always know what your target is and what's surrounding it. And that rule applies to combat scenarios as well. However, if there's one thing worse than wannabe realistic military movies that fail at it, it's people who take obviously unrealistic military movies and try taking them seriously. It's ironic that I'm mentioning this since I spent the entire video criticizing the lack of accuracy in this movie, but I was mainly focusing on weaponry, and despite the loadout being completely senseless, I can't deny the fact that it's cool. Predator never tried being John Wick or Heat, which are some of the movies that utilize real military tactics and choreograph them to stand on both sides of the line, with realism on one and cool firefight scenes on the other side. Predator always intended to be somewhat of a corny movie with laughably unrealistic action and stereotypical characters covering every archetype of the badass special operator that had existed at the time. And we can see this on multiple occasions as well. For example, in the scene in which the squad storms the guerrilla camp, there are multiple things that don't make sense. For one, even though they're not absolutely sure all the hostages are dead, the squad opens fire and sprays the camp with bullets. In real life, special op teams spend years learning how to extract hostages with minimal casualties. The guerrilla encampment as a whole doesn't make any sense. Why would they build it in a pit with a ridge overlooking it? Which sane commander would want their base in a death zone? And why would Blaine walk into the camp with his minigun instead of providing covering fire from the ridge right above the camp? Why isn't anyone wearing a helmet? Why are they putting their camouflage on the helicopter? Why are some guys wearing camouflage while others are sticking out like a nun in a brothel? Why is Dutch, the commander, allowing this? There are dozens of questions similar to these that we could be asking, but that's not the point. You don't watch Predator for military realism the same way you wouldn't watch The Fast and Furious as a documentary on real-world street racing. You watch it because it's a cool movie about a man fighting an overpowered alien sent to Earth to hunt humans. And this is the thing about old-school action movies. Predator, Rambo, Die Hard, Starship Troopers, Tango and Cash, they were fun, and we watched them because they were dumb fun. Modern action movies are no less fun, mind you, but they're fun in a different way. I can't help but water at the mouth when I see how well choreographed some of the fight scenes and gun handling is in movies like John Wick or Extraction, or in TV shows such as Band of Brothers or Generation Kill. But that's not what I watch Predator for. I know that no human on Earth can fire a minigun without a tripod, and I know no matter how strong Arnold Schwarzenegger is, there's no way he could hip-fire a 30-round burst from his M16 without the gun flying out of his hands. But I don't care. Is it unrealistic? Yes, it's one of the most unrealistic action movies ever made, and if you gave me a week, I wouldn't be able to write down all the things that don't make any sense. Is that important? Absolutely not. It's cool. It's supposed to be cool and fun, and that's always going to outweigh logic. So, The Predator is a lovably unrealistic movie when it comes to military and firearms realism. If I had to grade it on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd give it a 1. Hell, I'd give it a 0 if that were possible. Starting with absurdly muscular and stereotypically hypermasculine guys shaving without any cream on a helicopter that should be vibrating like a death row inmate on an electric chair, soldiers dual-wielding MP5s, waving a minigun around like it's made of paper, firing non-existent grenade launchers, all down to a pair of them rushing after an enemy that they had just seen kill half their team in an instant. But that, after all, shouldn't matter, because we want to see Mac shaving on the helicopter, and we want to see Blaine show off his masculine bravado in front of everyone. We want to see Dylan dual-wield MP5s, and by God do we want to see his MP5 firing even after his arm is torn off. We want to fantasize about what it'd be like to rush into the unknown to avenge your best friend, or what it'd be like to be the last man standing, facing off an unknown, ever-present, overpowered predator in an epic battle of hunter versus hunted. And when you look at it like that, you'll learn to appreciate the movie for what it is. Not a needlessly super realistic military documentary, but a fun action flick that's gonna have you at the edge of your seat, waving your fist at the sight of the ghoulish creature, hoping that Arnold's ingenuity sends him packing once and for all. So, what did you think of Predator? Do you appreciate the movie for what it is? Or was the lack of realism too much for you? And what are some other unrealistic things about the guns used in this movie? I left some things out on purpose, as they were pretty obvious. But do you think there's something I missed? What movie do you want me to pick apart next? Commando? Rambo? Die Hard? Leave your answers in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe to help grow the channel.